Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Brian Lusk. Thanks for joining me today. I'm in an unusual place as far as streaming goes. As you can see, this is actually my closet, my Harry Potter closet right here. It's the closet under the stairs. I'm in an unusual place because one of my kids needs an office for about the next month and a half or so. So we're going to make do with what we got right here, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to get some streaming done. Also, the other thing that's going on is that I just finished off with the flu, and my voice is very much uh, in. Well, it's questionable. It may give out during this, so bear with me as we go through some of this and some of the crazy things that are going on. Let's go ahead and get into it beyond that bit of information. Again, just kind of an unusual place to be, and I hope you guys can bear with the changes and the craziness here. All right, so let's go ahead and fire this up here. Just make sure everything looks good. Looking good there. Well, it's looking like me at least. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with this summary of what the Russians did on Christmas Day. Firing 70 missiles and over 100 drones into Ukraine in order to destroy the Ukrainian energy grid and freeze millions of Ukrainians in winter. Shooting down a civilian airliner from Azerbaijan and killing 38 civilians, including children, and violating Moldovan and Romanian airspace where missiles came down. Now, that last one here, I don't think I have anything, actually, any of the links on it right now, but there was a single missile, at least that as far as I understand, was supposed to be tracking through to a remote part of Ukraine. Ended up going over Moldova, and then into Romania and crashing in Romania. As far as I can tell, they're not doing anything with that about that right now. That happened about 2 days ago. So, I mean, that happened on Christmas is what happened. So, a lot of crazy things going on. And before I get into everything that's going on with this airliner, I want to talk to you about something very interesting, at least. I'm going to put it this way. You may have noted recently that there's been a lot of undersea cables and things like that are getting cut, especially in the Baltic Sea, particularly connecting Finland and Sweden to Europe proper and vice versa. Well, another cable was cut. So let's go ahead and talk about that for a bit. After I acknowledge that Al Bundy and Lucille are both here. Thank you for joining me this evening. Always glad to have you here. Lucille, in case you missed it, I'm recovering from the flu and my voice may give out. So I'm going to try and get through as much as I can here. But either way, we're going to get through as much as we can. So, Finnish authorities have actually seized a vessel by the name of Eagle S, and I'm going to give you kind of the high-level overview of the situation here. The East Link 2 power cable between Finland and Estonia was cut yesterday. That cable provides power from Finland to Estonia to help them to get off of the Russian power grid. Well, yesterday, about midday, that cable stopped transmitting power, and coincidentally, there was a Chinese-owned vessel that was passing through that exact area at exactly that time. So to give you the high level here, that the Finnish authorities immediately went out to this ship. They demanded the ship show what they're up to. For one thing, they noted that the anchor chain was actually down and dragging in the water when they approached the vessel. And when they brought up the anchor chain, they demanded they bring that up. There was no anchor at the end of that chain. So odds are this vessel is the one that deliberately dragged its anchor through the East Link 2 power line. It also damaged several other data lines as well. Now, my data here, since it's kind of been really kind of rolling through a whole lot of stuff, is a little bit backwards. So you were going to start with the Finnish authorities giving a press conference. Stating the police suspect that the cable was broken off due to, quote, external force. However, they have not at this point in time been able to actually see the seabed itself. Four data cables were also damaged, and the police say it was part of the same operation. According to the National Bureau of Investigation, the case is now being investigated as aggravated criminal damage. Eagle S is the main suspect, the ship. It was taken into custody by the border guard. Now, again, as I mentioned, the Finnish border guard approached the ship, demanded they raise their anchor because it had gone over that spot and just suddenly slowed way down, and the anchor was missing off the end of the chain. It was taken into custody by the border guard. Its anchor was down in the vicinity of the cable, which was, quote, unusual. Customs has also launched a preliminary investigation into a case of aggravated sanctions violation. They suspect Eagle S belongs to the Russian Shadow Fleet. Now, so you know, it was actually transporting petrol or fuel, unleaded fuel, and that fuel was loaded in Russian ports, making it likely attempting to evade Western sanctions. So, China owns the ship. I've got a few other details on that. I believe the captain is Russian, and it's missing its anchor, coincidentally at a place that it had its anchor down, that would have gone right over this power line. So, yeah, I mean, take your pick on exactly who you want to accuse of being involved in all of this, but I'd have to say that yes would be the answer. Shortly after the cable failure was discovered, the Finnish police actually landed on the Eagle S ship and took over the ship. They then took it into port for that, so that means the crew was unable to react in time to change the outcome of this one, which means that evidence may be preserved. See, this is a sister vessel of the New Polar, which destroyed the undersea gas pipeline back in 2023. The Finns were very direct about this. They were asked a very specific question about have they contacted the Russian authorities about this power cable. No was the answer. When will you be? We will not. So it's pretty clear that the Finns are pretty much already blaming Russia as the primary aggressor on this one, with, of course, China being the secondary aggressor in this regard. Some analysis of this. In fact, I think about a better version of this. Here's, by the way, this is a picture of the ship right here. Can't see it very well in the foggy conditions there, but the next day you can see it a little bit better behind the Finnish ship there. Okay. The underwater electricity cable S-Link 2 connecting the Finnish and Estonian power grids has been damaged. It is one of two cables that have a combined capacity of up to 1 gigawatt. Eastlink 2 provides 650 megawatts. No catastrophe has occurred. Neither the Finnish nor Estonian power grids collapsed, but it is worth taking a broader view of the problem. Now, by the way, this post is from Anton Herashchenko. You should be able to see that on the screen. The energy system of the Baltic states was and still is a part of BREL, Belarus, Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania ring during the Soviet era. Moreover, the Baltic countries themselves are energy consumers but not exporters, and until recently they had no possibility to get rid of dependence on imports from Belarus and Russia. An illustrative example, even after the commissioning of the Belarusian nuclear power plant, President of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, spoke in Ukrainian parliament and called for refusing to import electricity generated by this plant. At that time, the national energy grid operator declared zero imports, but the real stable flow into the Lithuanian energy system amounted to about 400 megawatts. And from imports in this direction, the Republic of Lithuania could actually reach the minimization of imports and even abandon them in the case of favorable scenario only in the second half of 2023. Nevertheless, since 2013, the construction of three power transmission lines under the Baltic Sea has started. These are the mentioned Eastlink and Nordbalt. There's Eastlink 1 and Eastlink 2, and Nordbalt. The latter, with a capacity of 700 megawatts, connects the Republic of Lithuania with the Swedish energy system. In parallel, construction of transmission lines in the direction of Poland has been developing, as well as its own generating capacity. Thus, by the end of 2024, the Baltic states could and did achieve energy independence from Russian imports. The missing capacities were obtained from nuclear power plants in Finland and Sweden, as well as from the Polish energy system, but the latter had round-trip flows. And in the summer of the same year, the Baltic states announced their intention to withdraw from Brel, that is, to eliminate dependence on Russia and Belarus. This event must take place in February 2025. And then 650 megawatts drops out of the system. The Baltic states will be able to cope with such losses due to the flows from Poland. But if something happens to Nordbalt, the third line, the situation will be close to critical. And it is not only about withdrawal from Brel, which will have to be postponed. Let's recall the Belarusian nuclear power plant, unit number 1, is under scheduled repair. Power unit number 2 is shut down because emergency sensors have been triggered. And it is worth mentioning that the software and the sensors and reactors themselves were supplied by Rosatom, the Russian energy agency. There is a great possibility that the Nordbalt cable will be damaged in the coming weeks, once again by some accidentally passing ship. So this is the situation in which Europe finds itself. The three countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all want to be off the Russian power grid because they don't want to be subject to Russia's whims. And then, of course, all of a sudden, these Russian captained ships start going over these transmission lines, and all of a sudden, those transmission lines stop working. The other two ships that were involved in similar events, such as this, were basically, there was no direct proof of the problem, of them causing the problem. Therefore, they were turned loose. And that this one, however, looks like they've caught them red-handed. So that's the circumstance we're looking at here. This is more than just a little bit of an accident. This looks like it's a deliberate attempt to cause chaos and destroy the European power system and make them more dependent on Russia. Now, I'm not sure if, by the way, let me know how the video looks. It says that there's not enough to actually maintain smooth streaming at this point. So keep me posted on what you're seeing. If things start cutting out, give me a heads up. All right, I'm kind of flipping through here, seeing how much of this is important to address here. From Tindar, here we go again with more undersea cables destroyed. The damage of the two undersea cables, Eastlink 1 and 2, which are connecting Estonia and Finland, are only the latest examples of what happens if you don't put high prices on the acts of sabotage like this. Impunity will only yield in more acts of Russian terrorism. Estonia in particular is particularly concerned about Russian aggression here. They're constantly looking for ways to attack Europe and NATO, especially in their hybrid warfare means. There is a city on the border between Estonia and Russia named Narva, which has a very large ethnic Russian population, and there's constant threats there of satellite jamming, propaganda, and surveillance from Russia. The officials believe that the Russians are trying to really provoke a reaction that could escalate into a larger conflict. And that's the situation over there with Eastlink 2. Now, the second of the three power lines that are across the Baltic Sea that have been deliberately damaged. Let's go ahead and talk about the Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8432. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play this real quick here. This is from the Korean Airlines Flight 7 that was shot down by the Soviet Union. Pause this. Seems like things haven't changed much over there in Russia. That's President Reagan certainly put the nail on the head right there. So Azerbaijan, I've got this also no sound. No, it should have sound. Check. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. Sound seems to be working on this end, but let's go ahead and you know what? I got this. I want to hear what's going on myself. Oh, no sound on Reagan's remarks. Okay, that's probably true. Let me hit this and try it again.
This was the Soviet Union against the world and the moral precepts which guide human relations among people everywhere. It was an act of barbarism, born of a society which wantonly disregards individual rights and the value of human life and seeks constantly to expand and dominate other nations.
If you heard it that time, it certainly seems like that things really haven't changed in Russia that much. If you didn't hear it, well, I'll drop the link into the comments here so you guys can watch it at your leisure. It's only a 20-second audio clip, so still very good to have. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Azerbaijan. Right. Now things are again, I've had a bunch of stuff coming in over the last 24 hours. So things are a little bit disorganized here as well, just because of how things have been going. This is later. This is later information right here. So you're going to see a lot of things going through all of the various stages of information here. The Azerbaijani government sources have confirmed that Flight 8432 of the Azerbaijan Airlines was shot down by a Russian missile, according to Euronews. And this isn't everything. According to Azeri government sources, the damaged aircraft was not allowed to land at any Russian airport, despite the pilot's requests for an emergency landing, and it was ordered to fly across the Caspian Sea towards Aktau in Kazakhstan. According to data, the plane's GPS navigation system was jammed throughout the flight path above the sea, forcing the damaged Azeri plane to fly all the way to Kazakhstan and even jam the GPS signal to make navigation as hard as possible, would perfectly fit into an attempt in having this plane crash over the open sea. Now let's talk about this plane, because I've got a whole lot of information here. I'm going to try and summarize it right now for you. The aircraft was flying into Grozny in Chechnya. They made several attempts to land. During the third reported attempt, at least according to the information I have right now, an air raid alert basically happened. They claimed that the Ukrainian drones were being detected and were being engaged. And during that, there was a sudden explosion. That explosion was close to the Azerbaijani Airlines Flight 8432. Now, I do have some pictures and some video here. We'll go through that, but to suffice to say that the body of the aircraft was riddled with small holes that were very much in line with what you would get from a Buck air defense system or a Panzer air defense missile. This, according to the best information I have, and understand much of this is speculation, and based on the evidence we have available. This resulted in the loss of hydraulic systems to both the elevators and the rudder. Ailerons is still, we're not quite sure what the situation with the ailerons were, but the tail of the aircraft effectively had no control. They managed to get the airplane up to about 10,000 feet. While they tried to troubleshoot the situation, initially the pilots believed it was a bird strike. But, again, information was spotty both for them and for us. They probably didn't see the video from inside the aircraft showing shrapnel holes and somebody with that had bled onto the floor. They didn't know that there were some oxygen masks deployed. Not all of them, just ones that were hit by the shrapnel. Anyways, these pilots managed to get the airplane under control using just the engines to control their attitude. There's reports, and I'm not really clear if it's absolutely true or if there's something else going on, that they were able to have some roll control. So whether that was how that was, we're not quite clear on. But apparently they had some roll control, and they were able to control some of their altitude with the creative use of their engines. The air traffic control directed them to over to Kazakhstan. The pilots managed to cross the Caspian Sea and begin descending into Aktu. And with the condition of the aircraft, they crash landed about 3 miles from the airfield. This resulted in the destruction of the forward half of the aircraft outright. The tail section landed, I would say, mostly intact. There were survivors around, as I recall, around 30, as well as about 40 deaths of civilians in this aircraft. The GPS jamming would have been a feature of what was going on during air defense. It could have also been directed specifically at the aircraft, trying to, as they said, potentially cause it to crash. They wouldn't have to. Explain why they managed to shoot down another aircraft, another passenger aircraft. And this overall is the circumstances we know it. Let's go ahead and quickly go through the data here. Again, they said the bird strike, but we'll see the actual damage here, and you'll see what I mean here. This is the shrapnel, the damage to the skin of the aircraft that you can see from that which crash landed. Again, the tail section impacted and remained mostly intact. There is video of it in flight, where the rear hydraulic access compartment from the near the tail was hanging open, and you can that indicates that it was damaged in flight. Jerry Lusk, Jerry on the chat here, absolutely knows aircraft way better than I ever will, and he is correct. You can control a lot of that with differential engine power, both for vertical and roll guidance. So absolutely pay attention to what he has to say on this one. But anyway, so you said this is in fact, if you look at the picture of it right here, that is, I believe, that access hatch, but I'm not sure. I don't have a good view here. Here's another view of the wider view of it, the tail section here where most of the survivors were. These pilots spent 1.5 hours struggling with this aircraft to try and bring it down intact. Managing to get it across the Caspian Sea and into Kazakhstan is nothing short of a miracle. There is some additional background that came in. There are reports that the pilots attempted to land 2 times in fog, and the third attempt they got the explosion. The plane didn't depressurize because they were under 10,000 feet. There was some damage to the damage actually shows that it was an explosion below and behind the aircraft where the shrapnel impacted in that way. The crew did take emergency action and began gaining altitude and flying in whatever direction they could as they determined the extent of the damage and how they could take partial control. They eventually headed over the Caspian Sea and attempted that emergency landing. Now this is the one where it says they still had ailerons. Again, I don't see how that would fly. I don't see how they could directly. I don't know the model of the aircraft. There could have still been wire attached to actual physical wires attached, but I don't know what the model is of the aircraft. This damage right here shows that it wasn't a bird strike, because you wouldn't get this on the back end of the of the wing. More pictures of the air defense damage right here. You can get a closer look yourself and make your own conclusion. The information I have indicates this is consistent with an air defense missile. There was a life preserver on board, one of the people that were flying on the aircraft. They understand they were still in the air for almost 2 hours after this event. And the people had time to take videos and send messages to loved ones and things like that. So this is probably going to have a whole lot of data that you wouldn't normally have in this type of an event. Some of the shrapnel damage here you can see from the inside. All this, these videos show this type of holes and damage. Jerry has pointed out it was an Embraer 190. When you run out of hydraulic oil, you don't have control. So there you go. That answers everything there. It was very likely the air defense was active in the area, as reported. A lot of these, again, we're kind of getting into the various reports here. Here's the an outside video. It's about 2.5 minutes long, of the aircraft trying to come in for a landing, and this is 2.5 minutes. As it's basically going up and down, they're trying to keep it under control. It's hard to watch. We'll just put it that way. I'll go ahead and fast forward a ways here. Here it is, I think, in the very close to terminal phase of flight here. Truly, for bringing it in with the amount of control they did, with nothing based but engines, that's probably about the best they could have done. It's a miracle that there were survivors at all. All because Russian air defense got a little bit trigger happy yet again. Like I said, we do have some footage from inside the airplane. It's kind of small here. Let's see if I can make it a bit bigger for you. Use the sound here. You can see some of the damage along the of the various parts of the interior. This man spoke for a bit about it. Some of the masks had dropped down, etc. I just can't imagine what it would have been like. You know, you've got an hour and a half. Rain. Would it be better to have no time? Or better to have this time to make your peace with what's about to happen? I just don't know. I don't know how I would feel about it. In response, Russia's claimed that it was a bird strike. It was anything but air defense missiles. They even went so far as to claim they shot down an F-16 in Zaporizhia in order to distract attention from it, with, by the way, no evidence that such a thing actually happened. Then basically all of the major Russian accounts have been absolutely silent about this topic after a few initial comments. And that just kind of indicates to me that they've gotten orders. It's time to be quiet about it. As fallout, Israel's flag carrier El Al is suspending all flights to Moscow due to developments in Russia's airspace. There's probably going to be other airlines following suit. In fact, the Moscow airports have announced as of today that they have the carpet restrictions, meaning there were no arrivals or departures. They were reporting that they had drones coming into Moscow yet again. So that's the situation with Flight 8432. From all indications, shot down by Russian air defense as it was attempting to land in Grozny, Chechnya. This seems to be a common theme for Russia these days. Hi, Robbie. Glad to see you as well. Kind of gives you a current here. I'm just off the end of a flu. I'm recovering from the flu, so my voice is going to be a bit rough today, and so I appreciate you guys hanging on and listening anyway, despite the rough voice. Now, let's talk about Russian ships a little bit more here. Another Russian ship has sunk off the coast of Spain after an explosion. This one's an interesting one. It was actually, the people initially theorized it was either heading to or coming back from Syria to try and take Russian equipment back. But no, it turned out it was carrying 2 cranes for Vladivostok and 2 hatches, nuclear reactor hatches for their nuclear icebreaker. And those were all lost at sea as part of this sinking. This makes, I believe, 5 ships that Russia has sunk in the last week, tops, couple of days. There were the 3 tankers over in the Black Sea, the floating crane, and now a cargo ship with various that was sailing to Vladivostok. 14 crew members were rescued and 2 are missing. Now, I don't know how this got in here. Let me go ahead and flip that out of here. Add to pop. Get that over there. Speaking of the ships that were sunk in the Black Sea, the fuel oil that they were carrying has started to kill wildlife and damage the shorelines in that area. It's pretty. It's going to be an ecological disaster for that area of the Black Sea. It's already killing off that sea life. Now let's go ahead and move to entirely outside of the Russia-Ukraine conflict for just a moment here, and let's talk about Yemen. The Houthis of Yemen actually back in September 2023 managed to repair and get airworthy their one and only fighter jet. This would be an ancient F-5 aircraft here, F-5 fighter. Nice. It was intended to be just basically a cheap aircraft that you could buy and deploy. And it was actually very good at the time. Well, obviously this was no threat to the U.S., but the Israelis went ahead and destroyed that F-5 fighter just today in an airstrike on the Sana'a airport, which is the capital city. 16 other people were injured as well. And 3 people were killed during these strikes that impacted the main airport in Sana'a. So interesting, just for the interesting perspective there. You know, an F-5 fighter getting destroyed like that. I hate to pull an Indiana Jones here, but it belonged in a museum. Not in the modern. Not in the modern battle skies. All right, let's go ahead and move on to general news here out of Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainian pilots and mechanics have completed their 6-month training on French Mirage 2005F fighter jets. Ukraine is set to receive the first ones in early 2025. Should be interesting to see. It's an older jet at this point, but still quite capable, especially considering the other types of jets that they're successfully using in Ukraine. The Portuguese donated a Ka-32 utility helicopter. Actually, they donated, I believe it was 6 of them in non-operational condition. They apparently have managed to restore at least one of them to flying condition. Interesting to see. Now, out of Russia itself, you may have seen this whole bit about Vladimir Putin going insane. This is where he talked about the reason that they would fight was because they were bored, and with this boredom, they had to do something to get some action. And Igor Sushko says, well, don't take this too much to heart. He thinks that he's just playing at being insane to make Western powers more scared of him, make him look more inconsistent here. I've watched this clip. Obviously, it was in Russian, and I've checked translations multiple times. He did, in fact, say this bit about boredom being the reason why they needed to get some action. And the funny thing is that some people who are determined not to believe that Vladimir Putin would say this, would say, well, that just doesn't even sound like something he would say. And then when you say, well, go check it out, they'd say, well, I don't speak Russian. Well, dude, that's what translations are for. Either go and check it out and figure out what he said, or just admit you're wrong. So interesting to see nonetheless. This was part of Vladimir Putin's, I believe it was 3 or 4.5 hour little press confab where he'd sit there and answer questions from the press. There were some other interesting questions, but none that were worth going into really detail here. There was a Ukrainian attack on Kazan, which is relative to the east of Moscow, and quite a ways away from Ukraine proper. Actually 2 drones hit this high-rise building, and initially it was reported this was residential. But later information says that the area in question was in fact not residential but business. And it was this attack was carried out on a Saturday, so therefore there was nobody in the offices, and therefore no injuries or deaths from this attack. The Russians like to make a lot of hay out of these things. How about this way to go to the military recruitment office? Drive your SUV right in through the window. I've got a cat who was asking to leave. Let me just go ahead and let her out real quick. So just bear with me a second. It'll be a moment. Here, off you go. And I'm back. See, that only took a moment. So the FSB is reporting that they have prevented another terrorist attack that was targeting high-ranking officials of the Ministry of Defense, allegedly with a car bomb disguised as a power bank and a bomb disguised as a document folder. They provide no evidence to support this. So yeah, they do show some their police making some arrests on this, but they've provided no evidence that there was actually another round. Not that I disbelieve it, just saying. However, there was also a series of explosions across Moscow. Pensioners in Russia were creating their own explosions with setting cars on fire, blowing up ATMs, launching fireworks and firecrackers, etc. Reportedly, this was after they received phone calls, likely from Ukraine, promising them money if they would carry out these attacks and provide evidence of carrying them out. There was a precision strike by Ukrainian Air Force units on a military-industrial facility in Kamysk-Shchetinsky, Rostov region. It was a solid rocket fuel plant for ballistic missiles, which would mean that at least for a little while, that'll mean less missiles that Russia can fuel up. Then there was this story, which I'm still trying to process here and see if I can get some more information on it. The Russian soldiers are complaining about unknown individuals posing as volunteers. They'll arrange a meeting somewhere at specific times and locations, and then all of a sudden a missile will impact that spot at that time. So, interesting to see. Vladimir Putin also apparently is getting kind of ticked off because Ukraine has said that at the end of in January, all Russian gas transit will be cut off through Ukraine. So Vladimir Putin got very animated talking about this, saying that, hey, look, we still have a pipeline. We can send fuel and gas to Europe. Why, it's right through Polish territory. Just turn it on and we'll start sending that oil. And he got very animated. You can kind of see him doing the whole, wow, talking through about this this pipeline that goes through Poland instead. The Poles are not allowing that to flow either. Already talked about this. And according to the Defense Intelligence Update from the UK, Russia launched approximately 2,300 one-way attack drones of varying types into Ukraine in the month of November, once again surpassing the previous month's total. Now, this is a lot here, so I'm going to go ahead and summarize some of it. Basically, each and every month, there's been an increasing number of drones that Russia has managed to launch into Ukraine. The rate of increase, however, in November was lower than that of October. So it's the curve, while still going upwards, is going upwards slower. The rate of increase from October to November dropped in comparison to previous months. December launch figures show approximately 850 launches as of this. However, it is likely that weather impacted this. They're looking at wow, yeah. They're looking at about at least 1,500 drones could be manufactured by Russia in a month. Probably a little bit higher than that, but still, that's still not exactly happy times for Ukraine. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the international front for a little bit. According to NATO countries, NATO is not ready to counter Russia without the U.S., and Europe is reaching its limits in supporting Ukraine. Leaders of frontline NATO countries, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland, openly admit Europe cannot defend itself without U.S. help. Then it means it's time for those countries to step it up. It's time for Europe to step it up. They're going to have to be prepared to take on any comers soon enough. And that's just you shouldn't be farming out your defense to another country. Yes, NATO is there to help out, but you want to be as prepared as possible. You don't want to leave it just to chance. The Netherlands has already allocated 3.8 billion euros to Ukraine and plans to add an additional 6 billion euros soon. So interesting. Now, there was a statement from Joe Biden on Russia's overnight attacks on Christmas Day. In the early hours of Christmas, Russia launched waves of missiles and drones against Ukrainian cities and critical energy infrastructure. The purpose of this outrageous attack was to cut off the Ukrainian people's access to heat and electricity during winter and to jeopardize the safety of its grid. Let me be clear, the Ukrainian people deserve to live in peace and safety, and the United States and the international community must continue to stand with Ukraine until it triumphs over Russian aggression. In recent months, the United States has provided Ukraine with hundreds of air defense missiles. And more are on the way. I have directed the Department of Defense to continue its surge of weapons deliveries to Ukraine, and the United States will continue to work tirelessly to strengthen Ukraine's position in its defense against Russian forces. Latvia, for its part, has handed over 612 vehicles confiscated from drunk drivers to Ukraine for the front lines. Sure, passenger vehicles, that's what everybody's using in Ukraine these days. And this is the KH-101 cruise missile. Sorry, I'm not meaning to cough into the microphone here. I'm working on it. This particular missile is the one that entered Romanian and Moldovan airspace for a short period before being shot down over Ukrainian territories. Now, I heard from another source that it actually fell in Romanian territory. Maybe it did fall into Ukrainian. I don't have that for sure. And the first Russian AN-124 flight from Kmymin Air Base to Al-Qadim Air Base in Libya has now landed. Basically, with Russia getting kicked out of Syria, there was indications they tried to negotiate to stay in Syria. The new government in Syria said, no way, Jose. And so Russia started moving all the equipment out. And then a Libyan general offered to allow Russia to move in over in Libya. So Russia may still come out smelling like a rose on this one in the end. Depends on what happens with this. Still, it's the first sign we've had that they're actually moving into Libya as to replace their presence in Syria. Let's go and talk about the front lines for a moment. Not a lot of movement here, just like is per normal here. Over here in Kursk, no changes to the lines, nothing near Kharkiv. Even this area over here in the east has been really quiet. The only area that's really been active is this area near Kharkova and this area surrounding in Pokrovsk. As you can just take a quick look here. There's not a lot of changes in the last day, but just a bunch of little ones. There are some details later in a bit. Nothing to the south. There was an attempt to cross over the Dnipro River with a massive bombardment of artillery on Kherson, an attempt to create a bridgehead at the Antonovsky Bridge by the Russians. All those attempts were repelled as of the last information I had, and the Russians ended up with losses and no new territory gained. A direct attack on the 810th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade in Logov-Kursk occurred yesterday. Now, this is an interesting one because apparently it was actually in a 5-story residential building, and the Russians had taken over the building to hide this command center. Well, the Ukrainians found it, and 17 Marines were killed, as well as the deputy brigade commander. Here's talking about Kherson, them attempting to get some foothold there. So far, unsuccessful. The War Gonzo, which is the Russian source, talks about the whole situation and generally confirms this with no significant changes. He does add a little bit more detail with Kharkova, with fighting continuing within the city limits, meaning that Russia hasn't taken the city itself outright. They are continuing their clearing operations near Pokrovsk. No changes near Chasiv Yar or Kursk, which basically calls a seesaw. And when War Gonzo calls it a seesaw, it means that the Russians tried to do things and kept getting their butts handed to them. So keep that in mind when you see that from War Gonzo. They do report that at least Ukraine Control Map does, reports that Russians have raised their flag in western Kharkova and advanced slightly near Lozova in Kharkiv, Velika Novosilka in Donetsk, and Vidrozhnaya near Pokrovsk, but no major changes in that regard. And no reports is also mentioning the situation near Kharkivka. There we go, and occupying Zarazova. And this is not a good situation for Ukraine at this point in time, but I think overall it's controllable depending on what they put into that area, at least from the other reports I'm seeing. More minor areas being captured by Russian forces. Again, this just is the part of the pattern at this point in time. We're going to need to keep watching this as things go. And that's basically the front lines. No major changes, nothing to really write home about to speak of. And I only have a couple of interesting extras. The M1A1 Abrams, for instance, is actually doing very well in the Avdiivka area. Well, sorry, in the Kursk area, where it's fighting a lot more like the Abrams was intended to fight. This entire thread is interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and just drop it into the comments for you guys to examine at your leisure. And my voice is starting to give out, so we're going to go ahead and finish off with this video of this Ukrainian soldier who is hiding out in his damaged vehicle. But as he prepares to leave, you know what he doesn't leave behind in his vehicle? The flag, showing where his loyalties truly are to his country and to his people. And that's everything for today. Again, thank you for joining me. I do apologize for the bad voice. This is probably what it's going to be like, at least for another couple of days here, maybe a little bit longer. But understand that I do appreciate you being here. I hope that you have enjoyed today's video, brief though it may have been. You guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.